All right, Ben. What have you got for me this time? Well, don't tell me. I've got to guess. It's quite gravelly.
Yeah, gravelly. Okay.
It sounds big, right? It's got it's like reverberating quite a lot. It makes me feel like it's a big animal.
It's not a tiny frog.
Not a tiny frog.
It's about 7 centimeters in length.
7 centimeters, and then
So pretty,
okay, and we're in.
It's pretty standard frog. When you think frog in your mind, you know.
Is a frog not a toad?
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, it's a frog, not a toad. Despite it does give off sort of toad energy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got a powerful timbre.
I'm really stuck, and I can't even think of a frog. I want to think of something near this area. Maybe it's a toad named a frog. I'm going to go for the Sonoran desert toad.
Sonoran desert toad. No, wrong side of the Atlantic. This is this is the Iberian frog. I was so taken by the worm lizards last episode, rooting around in the sort of northern Iberian Peninsula in this, seemingly quite sort of sandy and suitable for worm lizard sort of environment. What sort of frogs are there? Well, apparently the Iberian frog, which is Rama iberica, and if I was to be unfair about its appearance, I'd say it basically looks like the common frog.
Our common frog. Yeah, they're a bit greener though, aren't they?
The Iberian ones are browner, yeah. So the common frog being a bit greener. Iberian ones being a bit sort of like lumpier, I think, as well.
Yeah, they do just look like a common frog though. They're very, very similar, you're right. I actually thought that the Iberian ones were greener, but you're right. They're definitely browner, looking at Google.
Yes, but they do. I mean, it's like a rana species, so they vary. Yeah, with its wonderful, grumpy, almost toad-like call that you'd probably hear like March to May when they're breeding.
Okay.
So springtime on the Iberian
Spain.
Peninsula, or at least the north west of it, you might be lucky enough to hear an Iberian frog calling away.
There we go. Anything else particularly noteworthy about the Iberian frog, or just the fact that it sounds bigger than it is?
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of like going to that part of the world and finding something that sounded cool. So
yeah, I think you nailed it, mate. But then I didn't get a point. I wasn't actually even very close. So we are still on 3-2 scores on the doors, and yeah, I'm still winning, which is great. Although
will be for the foreseeable future.
I've scuppered this chance to extend my lead, and so it will be your turn again. And once more for luck, the Iberian frog.
See, that's a charming frog call. That is. I mean, you can't.
It's quite good. Yeah. It's quite good. It's quite good. All right, let's move on from frogs to snakes. Okay, we got a paper here by Gripshover, Meik, Nicholson, and Cox 2024. Feeding behaviour varies based upon prey defences in the ground snake Sonora episcopa, published in the Journal of Zoology, which I was on the Journal of Zoology website, and there's loads of good stuff on there. Definitely loads of stuff about reptiles. I feel like it's a bit of we do them quite a lot, but yeah, it's a bit of an untapped resource I found out. I was thinking of submitting something there, and I just had a look, and it's full of reptile goodness. But yeah, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
Yes, ground snakes. Possibly the most generic, common name for a snake ever.
Yeah.
Have you seen their Wikipedia page? The English language Wikipedia page for these guys?
Probably in the course of doing this, but I can't remember it. Why?
It's like 2 sentences.
Oh, really?
It's the most tragic animal species profile I've seen in a while.
This is for specifically Sonora episcopa. Episcopa.
Literally 2 sentences.
Wow.
It's like, it's a snake where it lives.
Yeah, well, I guess, it does probably suffer from quite the sort of generic ground dwelling, but I don't know. They're not like entirely generic looking because they can be really stripy. Are they stripier when they're young? The picture on Wikipedia looks quite pretty. Yeah, the one you got there, look, it's orange and black. It looks
It's
beautiful.
orange and black. It's an outrageously gorgeous looking snake.
Yeah, but according to Wikipedia, nothing of import.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, literally, it's nobody
Very
cares.
disappointing.
Well, luckily we care.
We do care. So do the authors of this paper, presumably.
Yeah, the scientists who took the time to try and discover how these snakes eat dangerous prey definitely care. So, yeah, the kind of pretext for this one is that animals that eat other animals sometimes have to deal with their prey being dangerous. So, we've covered this in snakes.
Awkward.
Yeah, awkward, dangerous. They're somewhere along the awkward, dangerous continuum.
Yeah.
What I would say is they're not your sort of soft-bodied, pathetic, easily digestible prey. Like, we're not talking
like spaghetti.
What's the easiest? Yeah, what's the easiest food a snake could eat? Would you say probably like
worms,
worms, insect larvae,
eggs. But then they're a little bit awkward because of the whole gate limitation thing.
Yeah, they're hard as well. You got to think of what to do with the shell after you eat them.
Frog eggs.
Frog eggs.
But
now
potentially
that
toxic.
is yeah, that's true. So I guess a lot of invertebrates have the potential to be toxic as well. So also I guess there's probably quite a lot of pitfalls even in this like soft-bodied slugs. Slugs quite easy.
Yes. I mean, they have their own sort of like gooey defense mechanisms too.
Yeah, I trod on one in my kitchen the other day and it squirted out this horrible stuff. Yeah, and have you ever had slug slime on your fingers? It's really hard to get it off.
Yeah.
It's like, it stays there after you wash your hands and like makes them lubricated. It's horrible. I hate that.
I don't know what it's made out of, but it's potent.
I don't know why slugs come in the kitchen. I just wish they'd stay outside. They come up through the drain. Do you get this in your house?
We've had it once.
Are you upstairs?
Yeah, we're
had it once.
Second floor, so yeah, it came a long way.
See, fair play. It's determined slug.
Back out in the garden.
All that way, just just sling them. We've covered a few different things about snakes and sort of what you might call dangerous or awkward prey. So we did that paper about snakes eating spiny fish. Sometimes the spines actually kill the predator if they don't do it right.
Oh gosh, yeah, we covered that whole paper with all sorts of grizzly.
Grizzly.
That's the word, thank you.
It was grizzly. It was grizzly, and for the snakes, it was misery. And yeah, so basically they have to kind of have ways of handling prey that keeps them safe, which is of course complicated because snakes don't have limbs. So they basically have to try and safely consume dangerous prey without arms or legs, using only their head and body. So this can lead to some decision making by snakes. So constricting snakes, they're known to throw more coils and squeeze more tightly when constricting larger prey animals. And some vipers, they will decide to either hold or release their prey following biting and envenoming it, depending on how large it is, right? So if a viper bites a small thing, and some of them always hold on, some of them always let go, but there are some which decide based on how big the prey is. And we also covered an interesting one with the kukri snake, Eligodon fasciolatus. That snake has an unusual means of handling toads, so those Asian spine toads, Dataphrynus, they have toxic secretions, and the way that the snakes combat this is by slicing them open with their teeth and only eating the organs from the interior of the toad. So that's a clever method to avoid poison.
Again, grim,
and
but
similarly
effective.
Horrible for the toad because, they're conscious and having their organs eaten. But similarly, crab-eating snakes, which are Fordonia leucobalia, and a few others, will pull the claws and legs off crabs after pinning them down. That was another one we did in the podcast, which was kind of cool. And, there aren't that many snakes that actually still we know of that don't eat their prey whole. Fordonia is sort of one of a few.
Yeah, you've listed a bunch of examples, but it is a tiny minority.
Yeah, the blind snakes are the other one that bite the heads off termites and stuff. And so, there's this genus Sonora, which includes 14 species of small, and they are rear-fanged snakes that feed on a variety of invertebrates, and they're sort of found across central and western USA and northern Mexico. And we're talking about the Great Plains ground snake.
Great Plains,
common name for this one?
Yes.
Yeah, Sonora episcopa. And like I said, they're rear-fanged, so they do have venom delivery systems in the back of their mouth. They just have to chew on them a bit. But they are weird because they eat spiders, scorpions, insects, and centipedes. and some of those can obviously be quite dangerous. And little was known about how they actually managed to do this. These are snakes which are eating, invertebrates. They're probably largely either not necessarily underground, but on the ground under bits of stuff. And that was how they caught all these snakes. They walked around Texas looking under trash.
Prey handling times potentially lower for smaller prey if they're meeting more of them. So we're talking the longest prey handling time they saw in this study was like 2,600 seconds. Oh my gosh, what is that in minutes?
10, 20, that's like 40
60.
minutes, isn't it? 45, 50 minutes? My guess.
Oh, yeah, 60 minutes, roughly. So an hour.
60 minutes.
But most of the time,
hour.
we're talking like 2, maybe 5.
2 minutes? 2 minutes to gobble down a centipede. That's mental.
If I'm reading this, if I'm reading the plot correctly, like a lot of the prey sort of video consumption stuff is looking like about 120 seconds. There's a whole bunch that are sort of double that for 4 or 5 minutes. Really, pretty much the bulk of them are under 10.
Right.
So
but they are...
You imagine the chances of observing that in the wild. Number one, hard to find snakes because snakes are sneaky. Second thing, you've got to find them in this 10-minute window that they happen to be consuming an invertebrate, which is also more unlikely because you've either spooking away the environments or spooking away the snakes, so they're probably not in the mood.
Exactly.
Tricky.
And so, it's rare to observe these things, and so the authors wanted to kind of find out how they handle dangerous prey like tarantulas, centipedes, and scorpions. Obviously, the danger from scorpions is twofold. They have pincers, aka chelipeds, which can pinch.
Chelipeds?
And they also...
That's what they're called, is it?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's cool.
That's the technical term. And they also have the telson, which is the venom delivery system. So that is the bulb at the top of the tail that also has a stinger on it, and that can obviously jab and sting. Tarantulas and centipedes both have venomous bites and are very fast. So these are kind of the sort of threats that the snakes face from these prey. And so, they collected some snakes from Texas. They went around looking under cover objects and hunting them down, and they collected a bunch of snakes. And they used these snakes to conduct some feeding trials where they introduced the snakes to a sort of arena, and then they took out all the hiding places so that they had to interact with the prey. And then they put in the prey in a bit of a
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
How many Thunderdome-esque papers have we covered at this point?
Quite a lot, really. Yeah, the Thunderdome is quite a popular vibe. Anytime you've got animals in an arena together and you're trying to discover how they behave, it ends up being a bit of a Thunderdome, really, doesn't it? It gets a little bit ancient. Gets a little bit ancient Rome. They wanted to see how these animals dealt with when you put a snake with these invertebrates which have a potential danger. What do they do? What should we start with? Should we go through each prey item and how they treated them individually? Because they were kind of different for each one.
Well, I think,
but there were
think
some
that's
common
the real
themes.
So that's if the title hadn't tipped you off, they treat spiders and scorpions and centipedes in different ways. So I guess, I think that's reasonably fair. A breakdown of how they deal with either.
Well, should we start with scorpions? Because I think scorpions are probably the coolest one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I think it's a more complex one, right? Because you're dealing with a more... anatomically, I suppose they're not that more complex, but they sort of seem it, don't they? With their additional sort of defense at front and back. That seems like a pretty tough nut to crack.
Yeah, and they've also got harder bodies, right? Scorpions are quite hard, whereas even a big tarantula, you can kind of squeeze it, it's soft.
Yes.
Like, you can squeeze a scorpion, but their exoskeleton is more rigid than a spider, which is generally just like a furry meat bag, right? With loads of,
I guess,
with loads of appendages. But so one of the things they did with scorpions, which was quite cool, is this thing called jaw pinning, which tended to be how they would approach them initially, which is where they kind of fly in with the head and they don't open their mouth, but they basically use their head as like a sort of pressing device to push down on the body of the scorpion, and then they can sort of throw a
a bit of substrate or the side of the Thunderdome arena prior to anything that would resemble a proper strike.
Yeah, and they did this to scorpions the most, suggesting they treat them as sort of quite dangerous. But what they would tend to do is kind of pin the scorpion against the substrate, usually if they could, the stinging tail, presumably to reduce the likelihood of being stung. And then they would like bite and hold the scorpion. So they tended to bite the scorpions either on the tail or one of the legs, and then they would move the mouth to the body and hang on to it for a bit. And they think that might be when they were trying to envenomate the scorpions using their rear fangs. So they're sort of like mouthing them a bit to try and introduce this venom, which might sort of subdue the scorpions.
Yep.
And despite all their efforts, though, during the capture and prey handling, scorpions managed to sting snakes on either the head or neck in 100% of trials.
Yes. So it's this sort of like, okay, do you have a strategy to reduce the chances of you being stung? If you do, it's not working. It seems to be worthless. So are they doing it because maybe sometimes it does work and it's a very, very low percentage and actually that's kind of worth the effort, / because it's not actually very much effort to try? I mean, they go on to sort of discuss in the discussion at the end that the fact that they are getting stung so routinely and don't seem to have any visible, negative sort of side effects from that suggests that these snakes are resistant, resilient, whatever term you want to give it, to the stings of these scorpions. So why bother with the behaviour to begin with? Unless it's very costly to deal with that venom, and you just can't see that they're dealing with it externally. And maybe that strategy does work sometimes. I mean, they had quite a few trials, so it seems...
Yeah. And the fact that they always got stung is, like, pretty telling. I mean, they're getting stung. But maybe it just hurts when they get stung and they don't like it, so they try and avoid it. It could just be sore.
But they're ultimately incapable of avoiding it.
Yeah, they're trying their best to get as few as possible, but they always get one or two.
Yeah.
But... So yeah, they're getting stung by the scorpions, but seemingly just weathering that blow. But they're also getting pinched by their little centipedes in 45% of cases, or 44% of cases, which is still quite a lot. So they're getting pinched. So despite the fact that they're trying to minimize it by grabbing the scorpion's tail, squashing with their bodies, they're still getting tagged. But like you say, they don't seem to be affected by the venom since, when they get stung, they still stay hanging on and they don't see any physical damage. So... yeah, they're pretty hardcore. So yeah, they basically deal with scorpions by mashing them down and then trying to hopefully get some venom into them for a bit of chewing, and then just swallowing them. They didn't seem to have a particular strategy for swallowing the scorpions. They just kind of like went for whatever was convenient. Some species which eat scorpions try certain strategies to like fold the claws against the body and stuff, but these guys, they didn't seem too fussed by that, and I think it might be because the scorpions they were eating were relatively small compared to themselves.
So they didn't need to sort of prey handle them in a way to make it, because that's the whole thing with consuming a mammal or something. Eating it one way, the limbs sort of fold up along the body. Eating another way, you're competing against those limbs as they sort of don't fold all the way back. So I would imagine there is a more efficient way and a less efficient way of consuming a scorpion in terms of direction.
And then what about spiders? So when they're attacking spiders, they do it slightly differently.
More strikes to the abdomen. So going straight for that center of mass.
Yeah, rather than going for the legs, which is interesting. And I think that might be because spiders are quite good at letting their legs go. So if they bite a leg, the spider could probably just dash off and just leave the leg. So yeah, they seem to be biting the abdomen. And so what they do is they get the spider, and I mean, they were still getting bitten by spiders, but only in about 29% of cases. So it's much less common for the spiders to bite them. Maybe the spiders don't think there's much point to it, or maybe it's because they're getting grabbed by the butt, they can't do it.
Right, it's going to be harder. That's the whole thing with the whole scorpion sting scenario, right? How do you sort of get a hold of the bulk of the animal while also mitigating that sting? That's the whole point of the sting being on a sort of appendage, right? It's flexible. It's going to get you no matter where you grab onto.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, they're sort of getting the spiders by the butt, and then once they've swallowed the abdomen, they do this thing where they like drag them around, and they seem to be doing it a lot mostly with spiders. This is a behavior they really only did often with spiders. They did it to the scorpions occasionally.
Yeah, I think
but
it was
once they
61% of the time they would drag the spider across the substrate.
Yeah, and they weren't exactly sure. Yeah, they weren't exactly sure why they were doing that. I mean, it might be, maybe the spider's got a good grip on the floor or something. It's making it harder to swallow. It could be it damages their legs and makes them easier to swallow. Maybe it incapacitates them. They also suggested it might knock the head off, although that didn't happen in their trials, so it doesn't seem that likely. It's unclear, essentially, why they drag spiders around.
And they did it more with larger spiders, too.
So that suggests maybe they are just trying to damage them.
Could be. Could just be a sort of secondary subduing thing while venom's taking effect.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, they've got these two strategies. They also did do some examples of centipedes, but they didn't catch as many centipedes to feed to the snakes, basically. So they didn't really have such a good sample size.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they tended to use kind of similar strategies, a bit of squashing.
Yeah, but more similar to the scorpion method than spider method is how they describe it in the results. Right on.
But it's just cool to see that these little snakes, they've got to attack relatively dangerous things and things which are very different in how they respond to being grabbed. And it's just cool to see that they have different methods for the different prey items. And they obviously, they implement different strategies based on the threat that they're facing, which is just really cool, And I'm sure that's the case for lots and lots of snakes that eat various different prey. But I guess the differences between invertebrate prey are probably that much more marked than mammalian prey. Like if you're catching a rat or a bird, not that birds are mammals, but a rat or a bird, you'd think they're probably treating them relatively similarly.
I mean, if you were just thinking mammals, you're going to be dealing with snakes of this size, sort of thing. You're going to be dealing with a lot of rodents or things that are reasonably similar body plan to rodents. Whereas,
they're tubes with legs.
Okay, you're dealing with two arachnids here, but they're dramatically different body plans, like you say. And then centipede is completely, completely different. I'm sure if they had more centipedes, they would have found some weird idiosyncrasies, like more sort of solid results on the idiosyncrasies there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But they talk about in the paper why it might be good for these snakes, these little ground snakes, to eat scorpions and centipedes, and they're super abundant in the environment. It's actually crazy. They were saying that there could be between 2,000 and 5,000 scorpions per hectare have been documented, and I think spiders as well. There's just loads and loads and loads of spiders. So by kind of exploiting these resources, they've managed to find a food source that's very, very abundant that they've capitalized on. And they alter their feeding behavior based on the defenses of those prey and use novel prey capture and handling behaviors. And I just think what's cool about this is not only do we not know how so many snakes handle their prey, particularly, I guess, with arthropod prey, but there are just so many more snakes that we could test this out on. Like, I suppose venom, a lot of snakes have venom, but all the little saw-scaled vipers, a lot of those eat scorpions, and I've never seen anything about how they tackle them.
It might be.
There's stuff about how the venom works.
They don't need. They strike, they release, and then prey handling is a sort of secondary concern because you've got something which is almost entirely incapacitated. So you're not having to deal with this. Trying to mitigate the stings and things like that. So it might be that they just sort of shift the effort and make higher use of venom than they do prey hand. But that in itself would be interesting to see, wouldn't it? If they don't need it because of the venom.
Yeah.
Or not even because of the venom, because of the venom delivery system, essentially, because these guys are making use of rear fangs.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to know how exactly that venom's affecting the terrible time for these poor little scorpions and spiders, though, once they've been grabbed onto. It's not a dignified death, is it?
Desert spiders
getting smushed and thrashed about. But there you go. I've got a big new respect for Sonora episcopa. Don't think we've done ground snakes on the podcast before, despite the fact they're beautiful and orange.
They're superb, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so. The other bit that I really like about these sorts of papers is you've got this little insight here that snakes are absolutely observing prey item and making a plan accordingly. So it does give you this insight that they are sort of planning ahead, right? This isn't they're biting onto a thing, then reacting to how it moves or how it reacts to them biting. This is pre-planned because the initial attack from the snake is coming in a slightly different way. So it really does, hints at some pretty smart plan making in my books.
Once again, reptiles demonstrating they're not just mindless little droids with pre-programmed behaviours and stereotypical activities. We like to see it.
Yeah.
They're clever.
Richer lives.
Richer lives. All right. So, have you got anything else about these ground snakes and their attacking of the prey? Do you know the only thing this was lacking was videos? Where are the videos at, yo?
I didn't go looking. I'm ashamed to say.
I didn't go looking either, but I didn't see a link, and I did look for a link for about 45 seconds, so I'm saying it was hard to find them. Maybe 30 seconds. So, shall we move on? We got some any other business this week.
Yes.
Let's have a little. So, I just wanted to mention this very large creature, which this is a sad one actually, because this magnificent beast has left us. So pour one out for Cassius. Cassius was, according to the Guinness World Records, so if you're interested in records, you'll know Guinness. Everyone knows Guinness. If it's not Guinness, it's not a record. I don't know why Guinness has the sort of monopoly on records, but they do. And
it was
they
just a thing
officially
that existed in pubs, wasn't it?
Was it just in pubs? Like, oh,
it's very pub quiz
possibly.
sort of territory as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but yeah. So the Guinness World Records accredited Cassius as the largest crocodile in captivity way back in 2012. He was 5.5 meters long, an absolute whopper. And we have some images in the video, and he basically just looks like an absolutely massive crocodile. Probably enhanced by the fact he's been put in quite a small pond, which he absolutely dwarfs. And Cassius gets in, the water gets out. Yeah, he doesn't look real.
No.
And actually, when I sent you the first image, Ben, and you were just like, "Why does this look fake?" And
I think I know why it is. So there's an image bandying around with two folks sort of sitting behind him, and I think it's the way it's lit. I think the flash has deadened some of the shadows, so it kind of makes it look like every component of the image has been photoshopped independently in the frame. And I think it's just a lighting thing that makes it look so dubious.
What's also, the water looks super weird though. And another thing which I think makes it look weird is that Cassius didn't have a front left leg. And so it kind of looks like he's been poorly drawn around and chopped into the water, but actually he's just missing a leg. Yeah. No. Look, he doesn't have a leg. He doesn't have
that's
a leg.
what I mean. Is you're expecting him to have a leg.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the sort of chop and paste.
But yeah, so he lived at Marineland, Melanesia, in Australia, and he's been there since 1987. He was owned by a guy called George Craig, and he's believed to be more than 110 years old, which is of course an estimate, but that is an elderly crocodile. Like I said, he's missing his left leg at the front. He's missing about 15 centimeters of his tail. He's covered in battle scars. You know, these are aggressive territorial animals, and when he was in the wild, he was probably battling them, especially being so large. He would have had to have seen off quite a few crocodiles. And the reason he ended up in captivity is because in 1984, he was accused of attacking boats in the Finniss River in the Northern Territory, Australia. Apparently he was causing chaos, so they caught him up and they took him to this facility where he ended up living out his days on display. But yeah, it's a shame that he's died. Magnificent animal.
Absolutely magnificent. I'd say the pictures are just... Yeah.
Yeah,
something else.
They kind of beg a belief, really. It's
they do.
Pretty insane.
I mean, you know in your mind that saltwater crocodiles get big, and you can picture a crocodile of, I don't know, 3 meters, 4 meters, but when it starts hitting, 5+, yeah, something else.
Yeah. A very ancient and very impressive beast.
Mm-hmm.
And ancient, I mean, in terms of his age, Ben, before you start getting pedantic about evolution. So, I think that's it. Have you got anything else to say about Cassius?
No, I don't. That's all I got. That's yeah.
Yeah, I just thought we should mention him. It's not every day that the largest one in captivity dies. I don't know about wherever there's. I guess they're hard to measure, the big giant ones, aren't they? And it does tend to be the case that the big giant ones are more likely to be a nuisance, or at least deemed a nuisance, and then they ended up getting caught up and put in places like this. But yeah, there we go. Guess we'll have to find out who the new record holder is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Who's got a big saltwater crocodile out there?
Who's got the biggest? Yeah. Who's got the biggest? I did see somewhere there has been a new one. I think it's called Clay. Nah, surely not. That might just be me thinking of Cassius Clay. Anyway,
we'll keep our eyes peeled. We'll see what pops up.
Yeah. Have you got anything else to add this week, Ben?
I don't. Nope. That's all me. It's all good.
Yeah, me too. Nothing else to add. So just to say thanks to our patrons, patreon.com/herphighlights if you'd like to support the podcast. And you can get in touch with us, herphighlights@gmail.com. We are on social media at herp_highlights on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me, Tom_E_major. Yeah, I think all that remains to be said is thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.